I will call the Tuesday, January 7th Finance Committee meeting to order. Beginning with a roll call, starting with Ms. Henry.
Present. Jennifer Loman here.
Zachary Epps present.
Ross Whiting present.
Leah Mulhern present.
Robin Murphy present.
And Dan Schultz present. Is there approval of previous meetings minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I think we can begin with Mr. Swigart.
Thank you, Dan. All right, tonight's agenda, I was hoping to discuss the interim financial statements as we always do. Look at where our historical revenue collections are through the end of December, which feels like a milestone period. Talk about upcoming potential resolution regarding the tax collector and the tax collection process in general, as it seems that's a topic that everyone wants to hear more about. And then following that, we'll talk about some board action items. One is a follow-up on the school facilities improvement grant we got for $1 million from the state, and the bid results for that project and that approval next week. And we'll talk about the approval of the MCIU general budget, which isn't due till February, but February's meeting, as you know, we talk about the preliminary budget. That takes up most of our time. Later agenda tonight, trying to get some things out of the way. And we'll also talk about the high school stadium turf and the work to get that project, that final bid piece out before the end of the month. All right, so first taking a look at the balance sheet, things are finally straightening themselves out and things are looking more comparable. We made some journal entries to make our balance sheet look more comparable to the prior year as we were catching up on some of our accrual items. Cash is still strong, $4.5 million increase over the prior year. You can see on the revenue side, we've collected almost $112 million to date versus $109 in the prior year, an increase of $2.7 million. Talk about the reasons why. Next slide. And our expenditures are currently up by $3.5 million. We'll talk about that on the next slide as well. So our local source revenue is showing an increase of $1.9 million. That is due to our local tax collection and our real estate tax increase, our just over 1% tax increase for the year. On the state source side, we're showing an increase of $700,000. That's primarily driven by the homestead money increase that was approved by the state this year. So we haven't received any of some of the other additional monies that were added to the budget, but we should be receiving some of those soon. And our federal money is comparable year over year at this point, following the state's payment schedule. As you know, the big financial change we had from the last meeting was a settlement of the CA contract. So we had some retroactive salary payments associated with P-Search payments, which are driving some of these categories, not entirely, but leading into those increases in those areas. And as you recall, in the past, we approved brand new curriculum in our regular programs and selling student resources out of our instructional programs. And the other large increase we're experiencing so far is operations and facilities. So we had quite a bit of movement this summer trying to get our buildings up to speed. One of our largest drivers now is some boiler issues we're experiencing at Elkins Park. That building is continuing to show its age and continuing to show some of the operational problems that were guiding our feasibility study. Any questions on the revenues and expenditures through December for Cheltenham School District?
Quick question.
Sure.
I think we were looking at the income statement or the right before this one. The balance sheet. Yeah. You mentioned the reduction in that's just the year-to-year reduction in expenditures. I'm looking at about $3.5 million overall.
This is an increase. So we're showing 56 million through the end of this December versus last year we're showing 52.5.
Okay, got it. Okay, I wanted to see that again. Okay.
And these numbers
that makes sense because I was actually
detailed.
yep, exactly. Yeah. But I saw one.
It was very exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Epps. Any other board questions?
All right, looking at some of our largest local revenues, we talked about our real estate taxes already. Our earned income tax collection is still strong. Our transfer taxes are level year over year, which is a good sign. And I would say the same thing about delinquent real estate taxes. As you recall, we've had some recent Fed Reserve prime rate decreases, so that's reflected in our interest earnings. So we're no longer earning north of 5% on all of our cash holdings. Now we're falling in the 4% range, which is cost us about $90,000 in interest income annually so far. Any questions on the local revenues?
So that's a $90,000 decrease? What we're,
A $90,000 decrease. We've collected 1.7 million in earnings on investments last year. This time,
so, okay.
7 million. But I mean, the good news is we don't have a swing. We're not experiencing a swing like leading up into the rate increase. All right, next topic was the tax collector. So currently tax collections are handled by the elected tax collector within the township. That tax collector works with Cheltenham Township staff for school district tax collections, and those monies and reports are remitted to the school district on a weekly basis or sooner if needed during tax collection season from July until through the end of January, when the remaining balances are submitted to the county. It has come to my attention that recently the township has put up to vote the potential to either take the tax collection in-house if there's no tax collector up for re-election, or potentially use a third-party service provider. So looking at these three options and how it impacts the district. First option is elected tax collector. The current process exists. The tax collector is elected. They work for the township. They collect taxes. We receive an RM. The second option being explored by the township and how it impacts the school district is the township collects its own taxes and using presumably the same personnel that it currently uses and remits those taxes to the school district. So little or no change to the school district other than does the school district compensate the township, and what does that compensation look like for those services? And the final option would be, does the township use a third-party service provider for its taxes, and does the school district in turn then either decide to take over its own tax collection or use a third-party service provider as well? So the point of bringing up this topic tonight is just to provide some assurances. On the school district side, we're prepared to do whatever the township decides on their end. Do not move forward with a tax collector. We've had a great experience with Mark Lieberson, the current tax collector. We don't think that experience will change in the near future. We've also worked very well with some of the township personnel. I don't know if they want to be mentioned, but all the township personnel we deal with real estate taxes, who currently we spend a lot of time with, a lot of effort with, are still in place. So we think if that option is chosen, we'll be fine as a district. If we use a third-party service provider, there are a handful of third-party service providers who do real estate tax collection across the state in a very significant way. So there is no doubt that they will be able to perform those services as needed. So regardless of which way the township moves in terms of tax collection, the school district should have an option that should provide no disruption to the way it operates or its real estate tax. The school district also receives business privilege tax, and that's collected by the tax collector currently. And there are the same three options for business privilege tax as well, with some additional considerations. So one thing we're looking for, and we're talking about drafting a resolution, and that was as a result of some discussion amongst all the business managers in Montgomery County about coming up with some sort of unified software where every district is using the same software. And that would help not only in school districts working together in personnel and answering questions about how real estate taxes are processed, but providing a uniform way in which tax collectors could be educated and trained, because they would all be using the same tax software regardless of what district they're collecting for. And we believe we could pick a software that would help with its compliance with DCD reporting, meaning the information we're required to give back to the tax collector about what's collected, the type of tax, discount, penalty, and what's liened. And also a lot of, I just want to add in there, a lot of the tax softwares and third-party tax collectors are certified tax. They're processes that have received formal training and formal certification in it. Any questions on tax collection?
Just before we open to board questions, I wanted to give a little bit of context, and Pam, as co-chair, if you wanted to give some additional context, that might be helpful, just because this is a fairly unique agenda item. Mostly because of the fact that it's an upcoming election year, and it was a bit of a timing event commissioners in the township took in December to explore the option of abolishing the tax collector position. That is an ongoing discussion, and so this is school board and school district related, this agenda item, but the broader context is there was a vote to advertise an ordinance in December. That vote did not pass, but that vote may come up again this month. It may come up again in a future month. And so what we're hearing is that as a district, we'll be okay, kind of regardless of what direction the Board of Commissioners goes. But I see our current tax officer is in the audience. We are a key stakeholder in this conversation, as 80% of, or a large portion of the collected taxes go to the district. So if this board has questions, if based on the guidance you've heard, there's a direction that we would like, or non-direction that we would like to put out there, it would be something that is taken into consideration by the township as they have their own discussions. So did I cover that effectively? I'm okay. Would it be would
Yes.
people be interested in
Just one,
hearing
yeah,
from Mark?
yeah,
Yeah.
so- Yes, you would, Mark.
Yes. Come to the table for old time's sake.
Yeah,
We're not going till midnight.
I'm leaving right after I'm done, by the way.
Well, first of all, thank you, judges. I'm glad you guys are doing it this way. Okay, regardless of the outcome, you're doing it in a deliberate.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Just for the record, could you just say your name and the fact
Mark
that you are the.
Lieberson, Township Finance Officer, Tax Collector,
Thank you.
former school board member.
And Shelton resident.
So first of all, I think you guys are doing it in the way it should be done. Whatever you guys do would fall into place in July of 26, if indeed you continue to pursue this, okay? So you're doing it in a very deliberate way, very, studying the issue instead of jumping in, which if any of you saw the December 18th meeting at the commissioners meeting, that was the primary issue, was the seeming rush. And I can understand what you said about the rush, because you got the political angle of the election coming up and everything else. But it's a major, major decision for them and for you. And also, I appreciate the kind words, Josh, and but to put it simply, I don't have any skin in the game. I'm done next January. Okay. My interest in just doing it is as a community member to make sure that things are done all right. Okay, so whatever I say, keep in mind, I'm not trying to save my job. I'm not trying, and my decision to not run was made months before this even came up. And actually, I believe that the commissioners actually said the reason that, and you sort of said the same thing, Josh, implied it. That I think they said I instigated this by deciding not to run. So in some ways, it's a backhanded compliment, and I appreciate it. I do want to first also address to you folks some of at that meeting, some of the totally false accusations made against me regarding the absence of transparency by one of the commissioners at that meeting. I've provided to the township and will provide to you folks whatever information you need that I have access to, as long as it doesn't fall beyond any legal parameters of confidentiality, whatever. And I think I've even talked to you guys a couple times. Since they wanted me assuming the office, to come to your meetings to present either a generic report of sort of what you provided here from the tax office or special things that you want. I do that with the commissioners, and that's what really got me upset about those remarks. Every monthly finance meeting, if you guys ever tuned in, I have a PowerPoint presentation, and I submit to them ahead of time how much we collected against what the budget is, some of the ins and outs, and then open up for questions. I can always do that, the same thing for you guys, and I really would like to, because I really want to try to set a precedent that whoever succeeds me, assuming that we go through the same process, that will be one of the expectations of the office, to come to your, maybe not every month, but maybe every quarter, whatever you folks want, to come and give a presentation, in the same vein that you guys gave, but a more generic thing of where we stand.
Mr. Lieberman, with all due respect, I'm just gonna take a point of privilege just real quick.
Sure.
One, commissioners are not here right now. I'm not familiar in entirety with what happened with December 18th. I know our decision is gonna be predicated on us working collaboratively with the township. I would like for this opportunity to be couched if there's any questions from the board, because I want to keep this targeted.
That's what I'm going there.
Yep.
All right, but I don't want per se you to lead that dialogue. If there's questions from the board, this is an opportunity for the board to ask those questions. If there's not questions from the board, I don't even want to continue, because we're set to have a meeting with township commissioner leadership in the near future. This is premature from my standpoint at this point in time. So I'm going to open the table. Are there specific questions from the board for Mr. Lieberman around his position that can give additional context? Yes, ma'am.
So just for additional context, no questions, because we've been in converse, we had an initial conversation, was the purpose was to make it clear that this is consideration from the township leadership around some potential changes to the tax office. And to let the board know that these were the three options that are on the table that are pretty much equally beneficial to the school district. And so no decision has been made, but we wanted you all to know in advance that this is what is happening. So that was the purpose of presenting it just here today. But there's not a whole lot of other information. As Dr. Scriven said, that a meeting is being set up with the commissioners or with the township to discuss what that means going forward.
Ms. Lemon?
What do other townships or entities or, municipal entities do around here for tax collection? Is it all different?
So Josh can.
So across the state, it's all across the board. Some districts have outsourced tax collection. Some districts don't. In Montgomery County, it's pretty much exclusively there's an elected tax collector. You go to Chester County, that's not the case. You go to Bucks County, it's a little bit more than that. So it depends what part of the state.
And I'm sorry.
Sorry.
How much, I assume this is driven by finances from the township's, perspective. Like, how much money are they hoping to save by eliminating?
So at the meeting, the township cited around $40,000 to $50,000 of savings. Mr. Lieberson, you can.
I can comment if you guys want me to,
Just
because I'm in the trenches. with this
overall
every day.
budget, the finance officer receives a salary from the township, from the county, and from the school district. I believe that totals $21,000 from the school district. That's correct.
37 from the township, and I think about, because I did get about 44 from the county. But,
And then there's an additional budget from, which you had mentioned.
somewhere along the line, you, the board, as the commissioners, when they make a decision, need to know exactly what the tax office does and provides. All right, and that's what I thought the purpose of me attending tonight's meeting was.
Yeah, it's just premature because we haven't had the meeting with the
Okay.
township.
And I
yet.
apologize
And
then for that.
Okay.
That said, Mark, you did send a document that outlines some of that in writing to Pam and I, which we can make sure the rest of the board
Absolutely.
sees.
And I am open for questions, whatever, but again, and in that document is my opinion. I hope for you guys to be open about it. I really thought that's what the purpose of the meeting was, share with you what the tax office does. And then you can use that in moving forward with your deliberation, but I guess I'm mistaken.
we're going to definitely have you come back.
Brian, I'd like to come back on the other stuff too, but I've always wanted to do that.
And look, we're very collaborative. We value partnership. I just don't, I believe doing things in decency and order,
Mhm.
and we're ahead of where we need to be right now. And just in my role as superintendent, until we've had the dialogue with the commissioners, I don't want to go down that path yet because we'd be out of order.
And I don't mean to, I do want to add one piece of context that is the township may well be voting on this again in less than 2 weeks.
So it's incumbent upon us to make sure we have a meeting prior to that.
Right.
So,
So that's,
But I'm saying, in order to have any kind of dialogue, is to have some information.
without a doubt.
And I will just say, I did send a similar document that you guys have.
Right.
To the board of commissioners with the opinion and
we'll make sure that's distributed. That said, Mr. Epps, did you have a
I
question?
had a follow, yeah, I had a follow for Mr. Swiger. Because you mentioned a resolution. And so was that with the business managers around transparency?
So one of the
Resolution.
dates that's driving this is by
Yeah.
February 15th, the compensation has to be set by the school board or whatever they're going to pay tax collectors. So that, and whatever other stipulations come with tax collecting job. So one of those resolutions was around the use of a specific tax software or the potential to require that to be used as part of the job going forward. So that was the resolution I talked about, which I don't have a final draft tonight because it's something that could be done the next finance meeting and approved at the next February board meeting. So
That would be from us. So a resolution from us kind of
From
stating
school
where we would want
I
to.
said, yes,
Go.
the school
The
district,
options.
in the future would have the opportunity to require the tax collector to use XX software at the school district's expense, because currently we pay for the tax collection software. And of course, it would be a collaborative process. It wouldn't be something we automatically require, but something we could make as a stipulation in the future, because like I said, a lot of municipalities, Montgomery County, are getting together and they're talking about using a common software, which I think, the current software we use is a little bit out of date because the process really hasn't changed significantly in a long time. So it would certainly help in tax collection and tax collection reporting.
can I just say something? Actually, before you even brought this up, and I was sitting back there, I made a note about coming up with new software. And we did discussion about various reports, and the open gov system that township's adopting is their financial angle. Getting some sort of software, like you said, maybe combining everything that every district can access at any time if you want, where you are.
Just for clarity, at some point in the future, this body will consider a resolution that will speak of both of those things as it relates to how we collect that.
And very specifically, we have to pass the compensation resolution in this upcoming legislative meeting. Is that correct, Josh?
We don't have to pass anything. We don't make any decision. It just reverts back.
It reverts back. So if we want to, we would, and then in that resolution is when we could include a clause that's saying, as part of that package, we would also like to retain the right to.
You guys have any questions for me at this point? Because I'm gonna take all.
No.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Mark.
Mark.
Leah?
Just
Or Ms.
quickly,
Muller?
follow up. Josh, or Mr. Swire, the February 15th date that you mentioned for the competition, is that because it's a municipal election year and it's for the next 4 years? It's not a yearly thing?
Right. It's an every 4 year.
Bill Williams.
Is Cheltenham unique in the discussion around exploration of this topic, or is this happening?
I couldn't answer that. I don't know.
Okay,
And I would guess that in Montgomery County, we probably are, but I don't know for sure.
okay. So, thank you.
So the message I'm trying to convey with this is we'll be, whatever decision is made going forward, it will be okay. I think a lot of the conversation happening around the tax collector is either premature or misinformed. A lot of the information that's been exchanged has been about what happens next and what do we do regarding what happens, have to be prepared. So that there, like I said, there's no interruption to service, there's no operation.
In my understanding from a timing perspective, regardless of the township's timing, the legal timing is that any time before the next officer is sworn in, this decision could be made. So the township could theoretically slow down and be reflective over the series of 4 or 5 months or even 9 months and make a decision at any time between now and December. So just mentioning that this may be something that isn't finished by January or February, it may be a discussion that occurs over a period of time. All right. Any other board comments or questions?
Just broadly, is this like a
Yes.
liaison group thing that then becomes a broader board conversation, or is this like a superintendent principal?
No, this is actually, board leadership with specific members from the administrative team, meeting with constituents from the, township. This is my whole piece and, you know, I don't do messy. So I'm not, you know, my apologies to you as a board for stepping in. My apologies to you. I didn't know
No,
who invited
you're good.
them or this or that, but if I were at a meeting and other names are coming up and scenarios and all, that's not how I operate. That hence is why I inserted myself when I did. I think there's some very valuable information that we can get, but I think there's some steps that we need to take first so that we drive the agenda and the questions based on what we need to make informed decisions. Having someone come at a table with open and their own, I don't do that. I will not put any of us in that compromising type of situation. And this is political in some ways, and we just need to be cognizant of that. So I'm explaining my actions as superintendent. And I know that I'm only one voice of 10. But I wasn't going down that path, so.
Makes sense. So if there are no other questions on this item, I think it sounds hopefully clear that board leadership from both boards will be having some follow-up conversations just to express and understand where things may be going. I think in terms of follow-up with the board itself, stay tuned with on what happens over in the township.
And we'll be fine.
And we'll be fine either way.
Either way.
All right, the next item to discuss is the Cheltenham High School Stretton Hall roof replacement. As you recall, that was to replace this section of the roof, which currently is experiencing some leaks, and you can tell just by the little stuff it is, it's out of date, it needs to be replaced. So we received $1 million from the state for improvement grant for our facilities district. Per that grant, we are required to spend 33% on a project, and the state funds, 25% of the state funds the other 75%. So you can see with the bid coming in lower than we anticipated, which is a good thing. We don't quite meet that threshold. We would have had to spend 1.3 million. So we're going to complete this portion of the grant and then probably look at work on another couple sections and do that bid later. We have time, but we want to get this approved and done so we can get this large piece of the grant lined up and done for the summer, and give the roofing company, ARC Roofing, the lowest bidder, plenty of time to get planned and ready to complete work. Any questions on this particular grant? Yes, Mr. Ross.
Sure, just confirming, Stretton is the auditorium, correct?
Correct.
Large.
Large, yes.
Yes,
Mr.
Charles.
Williams.
Practical question, anticipating some conflict between having this project and the football field happening at the same time, so just, you know, I would expect that, you know, SiteLogic or whoever's like helping manage would be able to know what that is, or I guess the question is are we managing this project?
Given the size and the nature of this project, we're managing it, not Site Logic, but we can make sure that Site Logic is aware and they don't interfere. I think this one being so far on the other side of the building shouldn't interfere. And there is a nice laydown area and space for them to work.
Don't
Great
mess
to
up,
see.
don't mess up my run.
Where's that?
Parallel parking, practicing.
You want to put it-
We had a rabbi, very excited
Excited
about
about
that.
you put some cones up?
Parkour.
All right, the next item was, as we discussed in a prior meeting, we currently have a bid out for the turf, the component materials and the turf and the track resurfacing and the work within the oval to dig up removed soil and replace those two items. So we're anticipating mid to late January to approve that bid. It will require a special meeting. I apologize, the timing of it isn't ideal, but we would like to stay on schedule on topic so we can make sure we're locking in the vendor for summer work in January, which is the best time to get a good price, as I'm told by Site Logic, and I have experience in the past as well. So there will be an opportunity to review that bid package, to review exactly what we'll be approving with alternatives for various materials, and then we'll present a bid package for approval later in the month. Any questions on that piece of the project? And as Laura hinted on, the rest of everything outside of the oval, the site work will be bid later in the year. I heard her say May, which is interesting, and I'll follow up with her, but that might free up some time for our track team to practice. So more to come on that. The next item for board approval, and again, this can wait until February, but February is a pretty busy meeting, is the membership services budget for the IU. So the IU hasn't even released their voting ballots yet, but they will be meeting this month to approve this budget and then pass that on to us. There isn't any anticipation of change. Again, this is just for some of the lesser services the IU does. It's government relations support, it's professional learning, it's technology services that are done jointly throughout the county. It's not the full schedule of shared services agreements for special ed students, which is a much larger contract. It's $1 billion. This is just $55,000 of the membership services piece. It's a 4% increase, which is $2,000. And every district has the exact same increase. I kind of cut the list off because it isn't really relevant what everyone else pays, but here's our piece. Here's last year. Here's this year. It's a 4% increase. So again, that'll be on February's agenda for approval.
Not Jane, not next week.
Not next week.
Okay.
Any questions on the turf and track or the IU?
Did have one for the turf and track. Just so I'm clear on process. So we'll have an opportunity to review a recommendation, and the recommendation will include one of the three packages that the district wants us to move forward with, but we'll also have the opportunity to look at what the.
I'll present the bid with alternatives. I'll receive your feedback. I won't present the package for.
And just a question, I guess, to the chair, to superintendent, like what is the intended form for us to be able to provide that feedback?
Exec session before a special meeting. I'll look to we'll hopefully schedule that around a meeting where everyone's already together.
All right, thank you.
Clarification on whether it can be an exec session. Do we know if that's an approved exec session topic?
It will not be decision making. It'll be informative, where I would present the results of the bid and the different alternatives.
So my information.
Right.
I'm sorry.
I guess, sorry, the reason it flagged was Mr. Riddell Williams was asking about the process for the board providing feedback, which I think is inherently deliberative. So we would want to make sure we can circle back on how that feedback should be provided.
Yeah, but most likely it would be at an information session that we would do prior to one of our regularly scheduled meetings.
James, you have a question? I'm sorry, the MCIU is a little premature. I know the MCIU is supposed to approve this portion of the budget on their end, but I figured talking about the preliminary budget next month would be, take up a lot of our time. I also included the Act One timeline. You can see the next step in this process is to present the preliminary budget. And we had one update. I keep presenting this budget considerations. These are some of our largest budget considerations. And the one update we had from the last meeting was there's no change to the PSERS contribution rate. So for every dollar in salary we pay, we're required to pay 34% to the state pension system. That number was scheduled to go up to 34.73%, which is approximately $400,000 of additional money we would have had to come up with. But that rate they announced on December 15th is not changing. So we will continue to pay 34%. So some expense avoided going forward.
Mr. White or Dr. Whiting?
I've got one question on this slide, and this is a question about the CPAS first look rates. So not the thing that you just said, but this, I'm looking at the medical prescription and combined coverage and seeing the exorbitant rate increases that have been happening over the last several years. This appears to be a leveling out. Is this a leveling out that everyone is experiencing currently, and we are the beneficiaries of kind of the plateauing of rates? What would you characterize this as?
So the industry average is still 8%. It's not the 1.9% we are, I'm sorry, 1% that we are anticipated to get next year. So I would call this a combination of things. Some of it's luck that, we have health employees because our claims rates are based on, or I'm sorry, our medical premium rates are based on our claims experience.
Okay.
The other piece would be some of the negotiation clauses that were put in contracts to bring our, in particular, prescription costs in line with the rest of the districts. Before our last couple of negotiations, we had one of the more expensive plans in the county. We have since negotiated it out. And now you can see we aren't experiencing these double-digit increases in prescription costs, and we are recouping some of that savings.
So I'm checking for understanding. This is a combination of luck and manufactured luck.
That is correct.
We have made our own luck and theirs.
That's correct. So, we were talking about 8% increase. That's only $10 million spend on
Right.
On medical and prescription coverage, of which, if it's $10 million spend, medical piece is 80%. So that's $8 million. Prescription is $2 million. So, seeing this kind of savings is a big deal.
Yes, it's a big deal.
So,
Thank you. I appreciate the clarity.
I wanted to ask while we're here because I was wondering how much you were gonna teach the teams on horn a little bit on the negotiations. Because I know this was a big piece of the negotiations, just not this year, but over the last few years. If we can do, I remember the conversations, if we can do this, we'd be able to save the money, then it's a part of negotiations, and now it's actually happened. So I would definitely want to give the hat to everyone involved on the negotiations team with everything. But also importantly, when we can look at these sort of raw numbers and say, oh, well, we're spending less on prescriptions, someone might think, well, that's actually a person needing medicine. And it stood out to me that we're not talking about quality here. We're really talking about brands versus non-brand, and people receiving the same quality of medicine that they need, which is ultimately very important as well. So I wanted to add that. That's something that resonated with me.
that is correct. I would look at it as instead of the menu being wide open, you have to take the cheaper items on the menu. If they don't work, then you move on to the more expensive items, but you have to go through the system, making sure that all alternatives are open to you for available. And again, this is reflective of the support staff contract. These rates would not be reflective of anything regarding professional staff contract, because these rates are based on our medical experience from October 2024 and prior. So anything that's recently been negotiated is not yet reflected. Hopefully we continue to see it lower than industry average trend going forward.
Regarding the PSERS rate highlighted, I know there's some relative excitement around the fact that that value did not increase. It feels like this is like the third year that it has not gone up, or is it the second, third?
This is the third year in a row that, yes, it has not increased. Well, the 1 year went from 34% to 33.99.
Right.
I think that was just somebody trying to say that it decreased. Effective.
And a follow-up, the projected increase you stated was 34.73. How far out do those projections go, and has there been a change to the projection based on?
So that 34.73 has always been up next on the deck every year, and it keeps getting pushed back. And that future projection is going to go to 34.73 and then work its way up to 36. After that is still on the horizon for PCERS. I mean, those are based on long-term actuarial calculations of how the fund is going to perform. And I believe the underlying rate is 7% return on the market over that long period of time. And I don't necessarily know that the rate change is based on that. I believe COVID had an impact on life expectancy, which reduced the cost of the fund. I believe that's one of the largest driving factors. So again, that's all actually not great news, but it's a bunch of actuarial calculations assembled to this rate.
Thank you.
Any other board questions? I want to make sure we go to the public before we adjourn. Are there additional agenda items?
That was it.
All right, then any questions from the public? Yes. Since it's a new meeting. Yes.
Hello, Sarah Maxwell, Park. I had a question about the track. I know you mentioned something about finalizing, what was it for the track? I'm sorry. That's why I missed that part when you mentioned the track and field, what we were finalizing for that.
So there was questions and some alternative considerations around what the track infill is, commonly referred to the crumb rubber, what type of material is used as infill to the grass blades of the artificial turf. And so we have bid some alternatives as to what could be used. And we're trying to make a decision on those alternatives based on a mixture of benefit, quality, and cost.
Are the track coaches or staff in discussion with this, or do they have no say with this?
We met with them originally on the onset of this project, and we've kind of worked with those parameters to get to this point. We can certainly include them. I have no issue including them and seeing what products we're looking at.
I think they would appreciate that. That's been a topic of discussion. We're in indoor track season, so right now we're talking about what we're going to be doing for outdoor track season, and it has come up quite a few times. So I think if at least Dr. Bill can be included in that conversation, it would be much appreciated.
I assume there are no online.
Do you have a question?
Okay. Were there any other board questions or?
Just to that point, I know the format of the feedback is gonna be a point, but also to the extent of our feedback, I think some parameters will be helpful, because I know in our information session, this topic was very granular, and my assumption would be all of the bids can probably source any of the materials based upon what we would want. And so I guess to what extent we should be providing feedback would also be helpful in this, because I don't want us to come and provide feedback and the whole bid comes down to some of these granular pieces that we have questions about. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm trying to avoid that.
No, I'm trying to avoid
So,
confusion.
So whatever extent you want feedback, that would be helpful.
It wouldn't be helpful to have a vote and then multiple option things to vote on, and the votes are all.
Yeah.
Right.
Sense. All right, well then with that, a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
second. All in favor?
Did you just say?
I can't second.
I heard it go.
And I heard somebody second, so.
Either I did or Charles.
Yeah, I'll call Charles, and then I'll say all in favor. I don't believe the chair is allowed to second the motion. The motion passes. Aye.